There we go. Good. Get rid of this. It looks like it's fine. Okay, good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Oh my, good. Welcome to you all. Welcome also to all of you watching this online. I shouldn't say watching, participating online. I think it's more than just watching. Before we begin, I have something nice to share with you. I got an email from Ranga. Ranga is a very nice man who very kindly, he creates all the timestamps for the satsangs that we post. So which means he listens to the satsang, he sees where we go from one question to another question, he records that time, and then he writes a brief explanation of that question, and that becomes the timestamps that are added to our posted videos. So Ranga sends an email. Namaste Swamiji, the number of questions answered since the beginning of online satsangs in December 2023 has crossed the 1,000 mark, 1,000 questions. It is now 1,069 questions. Congratulations on the milestone. Thank you for all your help. No, I don't need congratulation. I should congratulate you for being patient enough to listen to 1,000 questions being answered, and also to you for being engaged enough to send 1,000 questions. That's a big deal. And of course, many thanks to Ranga for continuing to create these timestamps. All right, nice. Our first question today comes from Prashanto. I have to get my Bengali pronunciation right. In Sanskrit, Prashanta. In Bengali, Prashanto. Pardon me if I'm messing that up. Okay, nice to get his questions here. His question is, according to Buddhist literature, the cause of suffering is desire, correct? Which is also the same for Hindu scriptures. The cause for suffering is indeed desire. Furthermore, you mentioned in a recent video that a pure mind is fully content and free from desire. Instead of pure mind, someone who's enlightened. Someone who's enlightened has no desires. But remember our definition of desire. We make a distinction between binding desires and non-binding desires. A distinction between desires and preferences. A desire, when I use the word desire, I mean a desire when it's not fulfilled creates suffering. A desire whose non-fulfillment creates suffering, unlike preferences. So an enlightened person can have lots of preferences. They want lots of things, but in the absence of fulfilling those desires, an enlightened person would not suffer. So Prashanto's question then is, therefore my question is, how is desire born in the first place? That's actually a very profound question. When you think about it, why do I have desires at all? Well, that's human it's actually biology. Starts at a cell. If you I don't know about a cell. An amoeba, I've given this example from science before, I like it. You put an amoeba on a slide, on a glass slide underneath a microscope. You put some sugar water in one corner and some vinegar in the other corner. That amoeba will run away from the vinegar and run towards the sugar water. So apparently even amoebas have desires. It's that natural. Then in Advaita Vedanta, we take a deeper look at it, as Buddha takes a deeper look at the problem of desire. Advaita Vedanta also takes a look at the problem of desire. And we trace the origin of desire to this: the non-recognition of your own innate divinity. The non-recognition of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Because if you knew how full and complete you already are, then in the absence of fulfilling your desires, you wouldn't care. That recognition of your true nature converts all of your desires into mere preferences. So it's really quite a good question. Next question from Jay, who lives in New York. In Platonic philosophy, here we go, philosophy, there is something known as form. I'm not sure we can get into this in detail, which is an ultimate non-physical, unchanging essence of a thing, acting as a perfect architect or blueprint for all objects in the sensible world. Does Vedanta accept this idea? It's a highly philosophical idea. To begin, and I'll give a small answer, but really there are two issues. First of all, questions like this may not directly contribute to our spiritual growth. And for that reason, in the satsang, I would prefer not to devote too much time to highly philosophical questions on this. Second problem is Jay understands Platonic philosophy. I understand a little bit of Platonic philosophy, but many of you may not. So let me give you the short version of this. Does Vedanta accept this idea? No. In Platonic philosophy, forms are real, substance is not. Pot is real, clay is not. Vedanta says the opposite. So, and by the way, when Platonic philosophy says forms are real, clay is not, substance is not, even though we have used this metaphor with regard to the clay pot in Vedanta a lot, don't think that the Platonic philosophers are wrong or stupid or foolish or something. It's highly developed philosophy, but it's a philosophy. And Vedanta is not. So if you're studying Plato and you come to understand form as being the ultimate reality, how does that help you? That's the difference. So it's pure philosophical knowledge which is not going to help us, and in Advaita Vedanta, pure philosophical knowledge is not our goal. Next question comes from Amit. Amit lives in India. We learn that consciousness is the subject, the awareful person, and consciousness is the subject, and mind with its thoughts, emotions, and perceptions is the object. You are the awareful observer of the thoughts and emotions and perceptions in your mind. But the mind is also used to study the nature of consciousness. The language used here is a little philosophical, so let's put it in a more Vedanta context. The mind is used to discover your own true nature as pure consciousness for the sake of putting an end to suffering. Notice how I'm rephrasing Amit's question here to make it more consistent with our approach to Advaita Vedanta. in avoiding a highly philosophical approach and taking a more, I won't say, you can say a more experiential approach, but that word gets people off in the wrong direction. Experience of suffering is specifically what we're addressing here. Okay, Amit's question. We can observe through the mind and see that consciousness is without boundaries and without any properties like gender, religion, nationality. Knowledge is gained through the mind. Absolutely. This is Amit's point, and which is absolutely clear. Your true nature is Satchidananda Atma, pure consciousness, and the mind is an instrument through which you can understand the nature of consciousness. Now, Amit's question, wouldn't that imply that the mind requires consciousness to, in turn, to study the nature of consciousness? Of course the mind requires consciousness, and that consciousness is always coupled with the mind. I would turn it around and say the mind is always coupled with consciousness, implying that consciousness, and here's finally the issue, implying that consciousness is self-aware through the mind. Sorry to be a little silly. So Amit's argument is quite good up until that point. Consciousness is not self-aware in the sense that consciousness looks at itself. Consciousness is you, the knower. He says subject. The metaphor we've used many times is consciousness is metaphorically represented by light. Light doesn't shine upon itself. Light just shines. In the same way, consciousness is not self-aware in the sense that consciousness doesn't reveal itself. It just shines. So with that, Amit tries to build an argument that only when consciousness is coupled with a mind can it know itself. Consciousness doesn't need to know itself. Consciousness doesn't need knowledge. Consciousness doesn't need Vedanta. Consciousness doesn't need Swami Tadatmananda. Consciousness just shines. A mind that has ignorance that causes suffering, that mind needs to understand the nature of consciousness. And that's what Vedanta is all about. When a particular mind is ignorant of one's true nature, as Satchidananda Atma, means where there's the absence of self-recognition, then there is suffering. For the sake of addressing that problem of suffering, that ignorance in the mind. Ignorance belongs to the mind. So the ignorance in the mind that causes suffering is removed through knowledge. How does that help consciousness? Not at all. Consciousness doesn't need help. As I said, consciousness doesn't need Vedanta. Another question here from Arun. Arun lives in California. I understand theoretically, conceptually, the basic concepts of Atma, Brahman, and non-duality. But I'm a 35-year-old man living with my wife and 3-year-old son with a job and career goals. Can I understand the consciousness as I can understand Vedanta, but in my current life, the body and mind are still very much in control. Now we're coming to the issue. I cannot just be an observer of my body and mind. How can I live my life? How can I fulfill my responsibilities to my family and my job, etc., if I'm just an observer of my body and mind? That's not what Vedanta teaches. Vedanta teaches that consciousness is your true nature, which empowers you to fulfill your duties. That is, consciousness makes you a sentient being. As a sentient being, you can know what your duties are and fulfill them. Is there any way that consciousness can take action on my body and mind? I'm not sure if I fully understand Arun's question, but I think Arun wants relief from this dilemma. If consciousness just shines, but I have to do all this hard work in life, what's the point? Consciousness, I would be facetious. I'm going to put some words in Arun's mouth. This is not Arun's question. But suppose someone says, Swamiji, what good is consciousness to me? I've got all these problems. How does consciousness help me with all my worldly problems? And I can understand the basis for that question, but it really shows a misunderstanding of what consciousness is. Consciousness is not something you have. So you have a mind, you have sense organs, eyes, ears, etc. You have powers of walking and talking and grabbing and moving and things. You have all of these powers, and then perhaps Arun thinks that he also has consciousness along with all those things. And just as your mind and sense organs and physical powers can help you fulfill your duties, maybe Arun wants consciousness to help him as well. But consciousness is not a Shakti that you possess. Shakti means power. You possess mental Shakti, mental powers. You possess physiological powers, powers of your sense organs. Consciousness is not a Shakti, a power that you possess. Consciousness is you. You are that consciousness. You don't possess, we've done this several times, but it's so important. Let me do it one more time. You don't possess consciousness because a possession is that which you can be without and you still exist. So if your car is stolen, you still exist. If your clothes are stolen, it'd be very embarrassing, but you would still exist. Suppose consciousness goes away. Do you still exist? That's the argument. So you do not possess consciousness. It's not a Shakti that can help you. Consciousness is your true nature. And we use the teachings of Advaita Vedanta to remove suffering so that we can handle our responsibilities in life more effectively. Okay, take another question here, then we'll see if any of you have questions. This question comes from Archana, who lives in Canada. Archana says, if Brahman is nirguna, nirguna means without qualities or attributes, and Maya is saguna. Saguna means with attributes and qualities. Maya, first of all, Maya, many of you know, but just so that we use our terms, actually many of you may have a wrong definition for Maya. Many times people say Maya is some kind of illusion, is a common mistranslation. In Advaita Vedanta, we say Maya, and I'm going to give you a very, very taut but precise definition. Maya is a creative capacity, a creative power through which non-dual Brahman appears in the form of duality. It is almost so terse it's hard to understand, but it's fully correct. Maya is a Shakti, a creative power through which non-dual Brahman appears as duality. So with that definition, and she says Maya is the creative capacity of Brahman. Actually, Maya's technical distinction between Ishvara and Brahman, and we're not going to go into this. Would be the next 2 hours of satsang to explain Brahman and Ishvara. Maya belongs to Ishvara, God, the creator, sustainer, destroyer. Ishvara possesses Maya. Why why am I correcting Archana here? She says, but Maya is a creative capacity of Brahman, meaning that Brahman possesses Maya. If Brahman possesses Maya, tell me, isn't being a possessor a guna, a quality? To possess something means you have some qualities or characteristics, saguna. So that which possesses Maya, and this is highly technical, and if some of you are struggling with this, I can understand that, but let's address Archana's question. If Brahman is since Brahman ultimately is non-dual, then, and not only non-dual, but nirguna, free from qualities, then Brahman can't possess anything, including Maya. That leads, which there is only one non-dual Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. There's only that one non-dual Brahman. Then we sit here then in our comfortable chairs and wonder, well, if there's only non-dual Brahman, what in the blank is all this? Pardon my blanking out here. What is all this? This is from a different this is from our perspective. From Brahman's perspective, there's only Brahman. From the perspective of clay, there's only clay. From another perspective, there's pot. So in the same way, from Brahman's perspective, there's only Brahman. From our perspective, there's all this. What is all this? It's a manifestation of Brahman through the power of Maya, which means Brahman associated with Maya, which means not nirguna Brahman, but saguna Brahman. And in Advaita Vedanta, saguna Brahman is a technical term for Ishvara, God, creator, sustainer, destroyer. So Ishvara possesses Maya. Ishvara is said to wield Maya to create the universe. Ishvara is not pure Brahman, nirguna Brahman. Ishvara is Brahman endowed with Maya, which means saguna Brahman, which means Ishvara. Okay, and if Maya is not Brahman itself, then its duality is right here. I'm not sure if I understand her question, but I think we've addressed this. Please explain this duality when everything is Advaita. You get it, right? If I have 1,000 pots, not just one pot, if I have 1,000 pots, still one clay. That's how Advaita Vedanta resolves the issue. From the perspective of clay, there's only clay. From the perspective of pot, there's 1,000 pots, if I had 1,000 pots. In the same way, from the perspective of nirguna Brahman, there's nothing else but Brahman. From our perspective, there's duality. We experience duality. There's a manifestation of duality. Okay. Any questions here? I'll take your questions later. Any other questions here? In back, you'll need the microphone. Yeah. Oh, turn your microphone up. Go ahead.
My question is about the doctrine of karma. So I think you said it's a matter of belief, but also you've compared it to like natural forces like gravity and the nuclear strong force and so on. But obviously, we see that gravity really isn't a matter of belief
Correct.
Could you elaborate on the difference between those two?
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. First of all, gravity is not what is a belief? And believe it or not, there's a whole system of philosophy. Oh, thank you. I keep forgetting that. Good, thank you. There's a whole system of philosophy that examines what is belief, what is knowledge, what is the difference between knowledge and belief. It's called epistemology, and it's a whole study of its own. So it's a big, complicated topic. What is the difference between belief and knowledge? So let's start with knowledge. Gravity exists. First of all, we all experience gravity, but then, and this is where Vedanta has a really important perspective on this. You can't always trust your experience to give you the right answer. And, I've never done this. You mentioned nuclear strong, so you know some science, and many of you know some science. Let me show you how we can't even trust our own experience of gravity. According to Newton, gravity was a force that's exerted on an object by another object. Almost like magnetism. So this is Newton. This is 500 years ago. Newton said that gravity is a force which creates a mutual attraction of objects. This pot is attracted to the earth. Because of that attractive power, the pot falls down. By the way, a corollary of Newton's law is not when you drop this pot, not only does the pot fall down, but the earth is attracted to the pot. Pot has mass, right? So then the earth pulls the pot, and the pot falls down. Of course, the relative weight of the two is massively different. But what it means is a necessary consequence of Newton's law is not only does the pot fall down, but the earth goes up a tiny bit. Honestly, if I drop this pot, not only does the pot fall down, but the earth moves up a tiny bit. So small, it's immeasurable. But because they're mutually attractive, earth pulls on the pot pulls on the earth. This is what Newton taught. And that seems to be consistent with our experience. Then, about 100 years ago, down the street here in Princeton, there used to live a Dr. Einstein, who said that this pot falls down due to the curvature of space. And I'm not going to explain this. There is no force at all exerted by the earth on this pot. Newton said that the mass of the earth distorts the shape of space. And because of the distortion of space, this pot falls. I'm not going to explain it because I'm not capable of explaining it. I'm not a science teacher. But this is what Newton taught. And the point I'm making here is that science goes beyond our experience. When we start with experience, science starts with observation, right? So we start with observation, but then science analyzes our observations and comes up with something more accurate, let us say, than our observation. An example I've given before is we think objects are solid, and then science goes beyond that experience of solidity to show us that atoms are mostly empty space. Enough said. Now let's just use that as an example to compare to doctrine of karma. Doctrine of karma is also based on experience. Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Do we experience good things happening to bad people and bad things happen? Yeah, all the time. Why? We want to why does this pot fall? We have an experience. We want to explain why. Why are some babies born with birth defects? Why? So we want to understand and explain our experience. The doctrine of karma does so. It tries to explain not why pots fall, it tries to explain why do bad things happen to good people and why do good things happen to bad people. And this very elaborate doctrine of karma was developed in ancient times and in South Asia by the great rishis who lived thousands of years ago. What makes the two teachings different is this. Science uses first two things. First, science looks out into the world, number one. And second, science uses observation. Well, actually, one thing. Science is based on observation of the world around us. Based on mathematical analysis of these observations, we have laws of science. Doctrine of karma, however, it began with observation of the world. You see a baby born with birth defects. You see good things happening to bad people. But then, instead of science would then attempt to measure things in the world, how would you measure the origin of a baby's birth defects or why good things happen to bad people? You see, the doctrine of karma is not a physical phenomenon in the world that can be studied through, and you understand this already, all of you understand this already. The doctrine of karma is based on non-perceptible things. And the non-perceptible thing that's at the basis of the doctrine of karma is something called adrishta karma phala. And if I explain this term, I think you'll understand the question. Everyone uses the word karma very casually. In fact, it's come into English dictionaries. But generally, when we use the word karma, it actually means in Sanskrit karma phala. Karma phala means the results of karma. In a Sanskrit dictionary, karma means an action. In Sanskrit, karma means action. Therefore, karma phala is the result of an action. And in English, we use the word karma mostly in that sense, right? When you say, if I ask you what is your karma, you're not thinking about what is your action, you're thinking about what is the results of your karma. That's how we use the word in English. Anyway, in Sanskrit, karma means action, karma phala, the result of an action, and then the doctrine of karma begins with this observation. The results of karma are twofold, drishta and adrishta. Drishta karma means drishta karma phala, drishta karma phala and adrishta karma phala. Drishta karma phala, drishta means seen, an immediately seen effect. If I drop this pot, it falls. That is drishta phala. Now, there's such a thing as adrishta karma phala, and it works like this. Suppose I take this pot and I throw it at you. It bounces off your head. You get angry at me for doing that. You take this pot and you fling it back at me. Just as an example. So you could argue that my act of throwing the pot at you and the lump you have on your head, that is drishta karma phala. But when the same pot comes back and hits me in the head and I get a bump, we could make an argument that could be explained as adrishta karma phala, which is to say that when you commit an action, there are two kinds of results. One kind of result that takes place immediately. I threw the pot. When I throw the pot, the result for me is I no longer have a pot. But then for me, there can be an adrishta karma phala, which means for the harmful acts I commit I will receive undesirable results at some time in the future. For the helpful deeds I commit, I will receive desirable results at some point in the future. These are adrishta karma phala. Now, where this doctrine differs from science is that we can't measure this adrishta karma phala by definition. When we say adrishta, anything drishta, seen in the world, observable, measurable. When we say adrishta, unseen, unmeasurable. Now, to finish this, in science, we can prove and disprove things through observation and analysis and mathematics. But look at this. Adrishta can't be observed, can't be studied, can't be proven scientifically, also can't be disproven scientifically. Why? As we just said, can't be observed. That which can't be observed can neither be proven nor disproven. So for this reason, we say the doctrine of karma is outside of the scope of science. It is an explanation that is not scientifically verifiable. And I'm defining now belief. It's an observation. But it's an observation that we can't prove or test scientifically. But we have an explanation. We don't have a scientific explanation, we have a non-scientific explanation, and we would call that a belief. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Good, good. That was a good question. Okay, any other questions here? Okay, let's finish up with a couple more online, then we'll wrap it up today. Next question comes from Alexander, who lives in British Columbia. Little long. Okay. My question is this. Advaita Vedanta says that I exist because of and within God. We can use the word God. As does everything else, Advaita Vedanta teaches that individual self is never truly separate from Brahman. Bhagavad Gita says that everything arises, exists, and returns to Krishna. Then that leaves me with the question, what is the actual necessity of sadhana? Spiritual practice. If reunion with the Absolute is inevitable, I'd agree with that statement. In fact, I'd take it another step further, but we'll come back to it. If reunion with the Absolute is inevitable, what exactly is the point of spiritual practice? What is it accelerating or changing? Did Shankara not say in Upadesha Sahasri, one of the texts we studied, that liberation is merely the removal of ignorance about what has already been true, what has been true already? That's absolutely correct. Okay, so let's I like this question, but it's actually not hard to answer. And that is, let me paraphrase Alexander's question. If your true self, Satchidananda Atma, he says, reunion with the Absolute is inevitable, I would say that there has never been any separation in the first place, is what Vedanta teaches. If there's no separation, there's no need for reunion. You are already that. We've observed many times, Tattvamasi, you are already that. I'm adding the word already because the verb is in the present tense. It doesn't say you will become that. In the Sanskrit is tat tvam bhavishyasi. You will become that. No, that's not what the Mahavakya says. Tat tvam asi. What would you say? Abhi ho gaya. Is that correct, Hindi? It's an already existent fact. So and this is the essence of Alexander's question. It's an already existent fact that Atma is already Brahman. You all are already that. Then, now his question, then what is the purpose of sadhana? Well, Alexander established very clearly that Atma doesn't need sadhana. As I said before, Atma doesn't need Advaita Vedanta and much less need Swami Tadatmananda. Who needs Vedanta is not Atma, but the one who says, I suffer. That's different. That suffering is associated not with Atma. That suffering is associated with a human being. And here's where we get out of philosophy and into what I consider to be real Vedanta. Not the philosophical stuff, but the essence of Vedanta is a solution to the problem of suffering. Simply put, Vedanta is not sadhana. He asks about sadhana, means spiritual practice. Atma needs no spiritual practice. The one who suffers needs spiritual practice, and Advaita Vedanta is a set of teachings that leads to the removal of that suffering through the discovery of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Okay. And that's actually the last question. So let me just elaborate one point and then we'll wrap up. There is a modern Vedanta known as Neo-Advaita. Neo-Vedanta, by the way, is different than Neo-Advaita. I don't want to talk about the difference. But Neo-Advaita is a modern kind of shortcut Vedanta. And the shortcut Vedanta goes like this. Advaita Vedanta teaches that your true nature is already Satchidananda Atma. You are already that. Therefore, you don't need Advaita Vedanta. You don't need spiritual practice. They actually teach, this is taught by the school of modern distorted form of Vedanta known as Advaita Vedanta. They say you don't need sadhana. All you need to do is to wake up to the fact, the truth, that you are Satchidananda Atma. Okay, wake up. Does it work? That's the problem. Neo-Advaita contains the truth of Advaita Vedanta, but it doesn't contain the methodology. So let me make that clear. Neo-Advaita and traditional Advaita Vedanta, they say exactly the same thing. Your true nature is already Satchidananda Atma Tattvamasi. There's no problem. There's no need for sadhana for Atma. Now, the difference is, Neo-Advaita says all you need to do is just wake up to that fact. But to me, not to me, how? How do you wake up? We need a teaching methodology, a means to lead you to personally discover how it is that you are not affected by the problems of the world, how it is that you're not affected by the problems of your body, how it is that you're not affected by the problems of your mind, how your nature as pure consciousness is not just independent of your body and mind, but utterly unaffected by your body and mind. This has to be personally discovered, and to make that discovery, we need two things. We need Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, and we need guidance for that process of Atma Vichara, and that guidance is found through the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. So we'll end with this observation you've probably heard me make before. What Advaita Vedanta teaches is not unique. What makes Advaita Vedanta unique is how it teaches. Its teaching methodology is something, in my view, absolutely amazing, remarkable. Okay, let us end with a prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat. Good. See you next time.